I'm Toby from Encore Design. We're helping people map their UX onto MCP apps.
Hey, I'm JC, product designer and developer, and along with Toby and Ray, we are basically looking into how MCP apps are evolving and how this whole space is shaping up, and really interesting. Ray?
Hi, I'm Ray Deck. I'm the founder over at State Change, and we're a community and mentoring service around helping people with the hardest 5%, both building with and for AI.
So that's only me left. So I'm Nikolai. I'm a co-founder of Alpic, the first all-in-one cloud platform for MCP servers and apps that allows you to build, deploy, monitor, and distribute your MCP apps all over the world. And also co-creator of SkyBridge, which is our open source framework to create MCP and ChatGPT apps.
Very cool. So just to set the scene, I asked Nikolai to come along today because he's been in New York for the last week or so, I think. And there's been a lot of activity around MCP in New York over the last week. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to try and touch base with him, get sort of the latest on what was talked about, what people are thinking about, and also maybe to talk a little bit about the event in Barcelona, MCP Connect event we've got in Barcelona next week as well. So thanks for coming along today, Nikolai. So just to kick off, so how did you find what were the main takeaways that you got from New York? In terms of was there a particular theme that you saw and what people were talking and thinking about?
So I think I saw three things. The first one is kind of the energy that we felt at the summit. There was more than I think 1,200 people, 1,200 people in New York, and the conclusion was basically that MCP is very far from being dead. There is of companies integrating MCP. There are a lot of companies building for MCP, building platforms, building MCP gateways, building analytics for MCP. We also had a booth there, and so yeah, we talked to a lot of people integrating MCP both for internal use cases and external use cases. And actually, a lot of the talks were about MCP versus skills or MCP versus CLI, and it was good to see, basically to set the record straight on the subjects and to see where MCP shines compared to skills, and how to combine the strengths of MCP, skills, and CLI if you want to use it well, basically. And I think the MCP is really striving because it's the universal connection layer between services, and so where basically if you want to connect to an external service, you connect your agent to an external service, you need to use MCP today, and there are quite a few good developments, I think, in the protocol that will go that way, that could make it even more universal.
Very cool. Because I noticed that Alpic recently has added to its library to actually allow a CLI option alongside the MCP server.
Yeah.
So I mean, how does Alpic think about that sort of separation between MCP and CLI and skills? What's your kind of view on how those things play together?
So my talk was actually about that, about CLI versus skills versus MCP, and my mental model is that CLI is great for developers for local workflows. So if you want to integrate your agent with GitHub or Sentry, or do some basically help your coding agent improve their workflows, that's great, and it's very efficient. It basically has been optimized for reduced token and space usage on your terminal for the last 50 years. It also has progressive discovery with the dash help command. So it has a lot of advantages, but it's only working for local development workflows, basically. If you want to connect to Salesforce, you can't use a CLI. If you want to handle authentication and multi-tenancy, you can't really have a CLI doing that. So and CLIs are not a standard. It's like every CLI is a different CLI. So if you want something that is auditable, analyzable, and easily integrable within enterprise, of course you can choose a CLI. And for consumers, I don't see my mom using the Booking.com CLI anytime soon. So so I think for all of these use cases, MCP is still the way to go, and I think it has some great days in front of it.
Very cool.
All right. I was just going to ask, like, the one of the reasons why CLIs have taken off a bit is the ease of their integration with agents, right? And like MCP, maybe because of like what the original dream was coming out of Anthropic, has historically been, from a technical point of view, quite hard to integrate. It's one of the reasons why, sort of Outlook has a bit of a business, right? Like, it does seem a little bit crazy that it requires like this whole stateful connection, and like you can have sessions that break down at a moment's notice. It doesn't really work with serverless technology, which drives up the cost of running an MCP server quite a bit. Are these problems that are that were discussed in the conference and that are on the roadmap for like how the MCP standard can be addressing it? Because that's a big barrier, right? I certainly hear what you're saying in terms of being more accessible, like the front end systems, but then the actual making it work has been historically both expensive and unreliable.
Yeah, definitely. I think all of this issue are known by the MCP committee and are being worked on already. So the statefulness of the protocol is being addressed, and normally in June, MCP will release a stateless first version of the protocol, so you don't have to take care of session IDs anymore, which will make it, of course, a lot more scalable. Um, then, uh, in terms of security, also, I think there have been a lot of improvements. So people can now move away from DCR, dynamic client registration, thanks to the CIMD standard that has been integrated in December now. One of the other big talks that I saw was about cross app access, which basically in enterprise environment allows you to delegate all of the authentication of all of your MCP servers to an external to your IDP, basically. So the IT can manage all of your connections with all of your
Right.
MCP servers. So yeah, basically all of the, I think well, not all, but most of the issue that we have heard over the past few months have been heard, I think, and are being worked on. And also, I think the SDKs, be it the official SDKs, or what we are developing with SkyBridge for MCP apps, or the fast MCP one for Python, they're also addressing a lot of the this complexity issue that you're talking about. And now it's a lot easier to actually build an MCP server than it was 6 months ago or 1 year ago.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was going to jump into that topic that you mentioned. Your mom wouldn't be able to use, or you don't see your mom using Booking.com CLI, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if were there anyone or any company talking about the UX of things in the MCP world?
Yeah. So, interesting enough, I think at this summit, the UX part was still something quite new. So there was, of course, a great keynote from Liad and Ido, the creators of MCP UI, and which became now MCP Apps, on Friday. But it was actually quite high level. because I think in the room, not that many people knew about the MCP apps and the UI and UX perspectives that it opens. I think it's also because it's of course there was a lot of enterprise people in at the conference, and both the Claude and ChatGPT implementation are less than 3 months old, so it takes time to for people to know to discover about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this something that you are thinking about in Outpick at all?
The UX part, yeah. I mean, we're thinking about it every day. We that's why we created SkyBridge, our open source framework, specifically to address the UX and UI parts of building the an MCP or ChatGPT app. Basically, it helps you do more quality and yeah, better apps more easily. It has a dev environment. It has a local emulator for you to easily build MCP apps. It has overall a great the dev environment for that. And so we on our side have been building MCP apps for the past 6 months now. And when I say building, it's like dozens and dozens of CP apps for us and for customers too. And we do see a great future for those this year. I think the publication of MCP apps is accelerating both in ChatGPT and in Cloud, and more B2C and B2B companies are now starting building those.
So
I think
I just wanted to ask about the dozens part. Like for these are all apps that have like the UX piece, right? So rather MCP UI or using the new standard, and dozens, but there are only like what, maybe a couple hundred combined on the two major platforms. So are these mostly like so in your experience, like are these mostly private applications or being used like behind the corporate firewall, or mostly being used in dev mode? Are they most being used like through Goose as opposed to being used through ChatGPT? I mean, like, I think there's like this hidden world of MCP servers that you might be able just to speak to a little bit because you have more access to it than most.
Yeah. Yeah. So on our side, we actually most of the apps we have built are in the process of being published. The
Okay.
problem is that it takes from 1 to 3 months to get your app published into the OpenAI store. So we already have, I think, almost 10 different apps built with SkyBridge and by Alpic that are in the ChatGPT store right now. So we're almost at what 3% of the of the published app in the store with SkyBridge, or maybe even more. And there are at least the same amount waiting in the publication process, the submission process, basically. But you're right. On top of that, there is also uh, a big hidden part of MCP servers and MCP apps uh, that is split in two ways. I think there is the B2B companies that build MCP servers and now apps for their external customers, but they don't need to advertise them or in the platforms in the marketplaces, because they just can push them to the customers directly. And then there is also thousands and thousands, I think, of companies that are building internal MCP servers. Um, these, I think, are not at the stage of having the UX yet for most, because the first step for them is basically to build a server to get the relevant data. And that was actually a lot of our discussions on Thursday and Friday at the summit, was with customers who are finishing their MCP server and now are starting to think of, okay, now what should I add in terms of UI layer to my server to make it even more useful for my users.
Cool. Thanks so much.
cool. So I guess one of the things that I noticed they came out today is Microsoft has just announced this sort of app store for MCP apps inside the Copilot, right? The App Store,
Yes.
which is going to be interesting. So I think one of the things that's interesting for me is, like, obviously you've built a lot of MCP apps. What would you say are the main pain points right now exists right now for MCP, particularly MCP apps? What are the things that people struggle with? Because I think, from what we see, and the reason why we focus on UX is because UX is a very different way of thinking about things, right? You don't control the flow always, right? You've kind of got multiple parties. You've got the LLM, you've got the user, each potentially controlling the flow. And you've got to kind of think about what that means across all the different tools you have and make sure that you have a consistent, particularly, generating a particular workflow. You've got to make sure that whatever entry point comes in, they can achieve what the goal is. And I think what we see is that often people think about the individual tools, but they're not thinking about what is the actual need that the user wants to solve, and making sure that every entry and exit point helps the user deliver what they need to do. So that's one of the things we've seen. But I mean, from your perspective, what would be the sort of key sort of pain points that in building an MCP app that people kind of struggle with?
Yeah, well, I think first, um, it's about the understanding the concept of your app, basically, and understanding that just moving your web or mobile app to inside ChatGPT is not gonna really work. A lot of people say, okay, I want to have my e-commerce shop inside ChatGPT, and I'm just gonna copy my layouts, and that's it. I think you really need to rethink the use cases and the intent, as you said. Start with the intent of the users and how this intent can be activated or improved by LLMs, basically. And so the actual design of the app, I think is one of the main blockers. Find an app that is useful in such a GPT, and then when you implement it, as you said, being able to synchronize what the user sees and does on the UI, what the model knows about the user and the UI, and kind of make all of this flow well together is probably the most difficult part.
Interesting. Sorry, JC, do you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say that's the kind of stuff we implemented into SkyBridge. We have, for instance, an easy way to track the to tell the model what the user is seeing with a descriptive attribute that you can add into your React component, basically called data LLM, where you can say, okay, if the person has clicked on the button, it sends a message to the model saying, okay, now the user is viewing this specific product. Whereas if it didn't, you can say, okay, it's looking at the catalog of the products, etc., etc.
Very cool.
That's very useful, because what we see when we are, reviewing or testing certain apps is that the UI and the rest of the LLM environment, they work in isolation, and sometimes that creates a confusing experience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And so you mentioned that some companies, probably you were referring to these B2B that exist under the, let's say, corporate surface. They are now starting to worry or to think about UI, UX, right? So am I understanding correctly that they basically worry about, yeah, like putting the MCP server in place, and then they say, oh wait, there's this UI UX layer that we need to worry about? Do you think that hinders them in some way? Is there a better point in that journey that they should start thinking about the UI UX?
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that if you think about UI UX after you have built your tools, it might be too late. Yeah, I agree. Uh, so we actually saw some customers that needed to that built two versions of their MCPs. One which is without the UI, which is like really specific for data and like LLM queries, and another one that is sometimes more again intent based, where they also have the UI integrated. So it can be actually two different apps, two different servers. Yeah.
Right. Now I have another follow-up question on that because I think that's very interesting. Now that you mentioned they're basically two apps, right? So they said, okay, this one is more for just for internal use or more data oriented, and then there's one user facing. I'm guessing, right? So have you also built an outtake or yourself have tested with building MCP apps for agents, so agent facing instead of user facing, in a way that you can actually this is something that we've discussed some weeks ago. It's like how the UX will vary when you're building user facing app versus an user agent facing app. So have you got any experience on this, or have you seen any differences in how to handle both cases?
Yeah, we've been thinking about this, of course, a lot, especially with the success of OpenCloud and now Cloud Cowork, that can really do a lot of tasks automatically, without any human intervention. And well, I think there are like really two different like opposite direction I think it can take. The first is kind of paradoxically maybe less UI, because if the agent does everything, uh, it doesn't need any UI anymore to choose between two different trips. It just needs the actual data and how much it costs, for instance, or like it can do all of the decisions with pure text. But in that case, in the end, when the agent presents the results to the user, that's actually where it needs to show some UI. But this UI can be generated by the agents. So that's kind of the very futuristic answer to this, where I think if you give more autonomy to agents, the UI can actually disappear first, but needs to be to reappear at the end of the flow. Um, and well, the other uh, way around is WebMCP, I think, where basic WebMCP is basically a web API, like WebGL or WebRTC, that are integrated directly into the browser, into Chrome, that allow uh, browser agents. So browser agents are the agents that have access to the browser and can click on behalf of the user, and take screenshots, etc., etc. Basically, navigate instead of the user. And WebRTC allows to give specific tools to the browsing agent, so it's easier for the agent to navigate a website, because today, with all of the JavaScript and all of the like complex forms that can have in a website, is actually pretty complicated for a browsing agent to work, and it's very, very expensive in tokens. And so one way to simplify this for the browsing agent is to have UIs on your website that are uh, specifically triggered when it's an agent that does the work for you, and not the human anymore. And that can
Interesting.
be done. We actually did a prototype, POC, where you can integrate an MCP app into your website that can be activated when a browsing agent does the request by WebMCP. But yeah, I think there is a lot of things to do there also.
That's very interesting. So it's like building within your website an agent-friendly website that
Yeah,
is very
which
well.
is only activated for web MCP users, which are agents basically. Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
But both of
That's
them are
very
very
cool.
futuristic. I mean, it's not. I mean, well, when I say futuristic, it's maybe 3 months ahead, but but it's not today at least.
One thing I was going to say is going back to the New Yorker for a minute. What was the things? Well, are there any particular things you were most excited about that you heard about in terms of you hadn't heard before? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of developments which are people fixing the issues that we have with the MCP standard. But were there things or ideas that you heard about that you hadn't come across before that was kind of new and interesting?
So it was actually one of the things I was a bit sad about is that there were no like huge announcements during the MCP Dev Summit. It was quite technical, with great technical subjects, but no big company did any like huge announcement around it. That said, we saw um, a lot of people from the major AI companies there. And I think the adoption by MCP clients of MCP apps and the MCP standard is generally is going to accelerate. So today we have Anthropic and OpenAI mostly. Well, and VS Code and Goose and others too that are a bit smaller in terms of usage. But I think there are some new players that are gonna adopt both MCP and MCP apps very soon. So that was really one of the of the highlights, I think, of the week.
And actually, it makes an interesting question for me. So, I mean, the thing that's a bit of a mission is, although I see Google making a lot of MCP servers for like Google Analytics and Google Ads, I don't see MCP really incorporated into Gemini other than the Gemini CLI. You know, there is no Gemini app with supporting MCP apps, which is seems a strange admission. I mean, I guess they've got a different standard that they like to push, but have you heard any more about Google doing something around MCP apps? Because they seem like the biggest kind of gap in sort of space at the moment.
Well, yeah, again, no announcement, but there were people from Google there. And there are people from Google in the MCP apps working group too.
Okay.
So hopefully it will happen sooner than later.
Very cool. Well, so one other thing that I think would be useful to talk about, maybe, unless Ray or JC have got another question, is maybe touch a little bit about the Barcelona meetup next week that we're going to do together. So, you know, can you maybe talk a little bit about, because Outpick is like, if you're phenomenal, going around the world trying to evangelize MCP apps for everybody. What's the kind of what are the main goals that you want to get out of these sort of Connect days? You know, what do you, you know, what are the important things for you when we set up an event like this, and you know, how can we make it really successful?
I think events like this are really for technical people or not that technical actually to meet up and to exchange ideas and on our side it helps also evangelizing MCP as a standard and see other people talking about their experience and their integration of MCP inside the company or the how their MCP apps talk about the process of submission process for MCP apps or how the results in production of what they have released. So it's really a great way for the community to learn, I think, together. And I think I hope that's how something we have been able to achieve in other cities. So as you know, we will first launch in Paris now 1 year ago almost. We started small with like 50 people probably for the first meetup. Now we have more than 200 people coming at every event. We did a conference in Paris, one full day conference in February. We launched, I think, in 10 different cities between New York, San Francisco, Berlin, London, etc., etc. And so I hope that we can reproduce the same excitement in Barcelona, and knowing that the some of the companies and people in Barcelona, I'm sure it's gonna be a great event.
Very cool. JC, Ray, have you got any other things you want to cover off?
Not from my side.
I actually did. We talked about OpenClaw a little bit ago,
Yep.
right? And we talk about agents, and you know, I think that the if we were having a conversation in 2023, it's about generative text, right? If we have a conversation in 2024, it's about code gen and tool use, right? If we're having a conversation in 2025, it's starting to be about agentic development, right? That's beginning of 25 is when Cloud Code came out, right? And like Cloud Code was kind of a lot of the story of 2025. And now here we are in 2026, and like, I mean, I realize it was released right at the end of 25, but really a lot of the story of 26, I think, is OpenClaw, right? And now Hermes is coming out, and we know that Anthropic and I'm sure OpenAI and all those folks are going to be coming out with their own answers, right, to these more autonomous personal agent type work, and it changes the dynamic, right, by which we talk to these systems. Like the usual way we do an AI conversation in sort of the chat GPT mode is call and response. I make a request, it runs the request basically statelessly, and then comes back, right? Gives me text, or gives me or runs tools, whatever, right? For that combination, sort of loop back around. And then MCP apps kind of fit into that mix, right? Of a tool use that then also has a widget, shows stuff, whatever. But OpenClaw is not like that, right? OpenClaw is, first, it's not running on an, controlled, optimized communication environment, right? People are running it in Slack, they're running it in Telegram. That's how I use it. They're running in WhatsApp, whatever. Or Discord's also a popular way of doing it, right? Setting up your own private Discord server. And so we have a little bit less control over what the medium is. And also, it is doing things for us and coming back, right? So like it doesn't have the same call and response that like sort of I think was part of the assumptions of what we were originally thinking about with MCP and therefore with MCP UI. What are you seeing is the future of, maybe it's through MCP, but just sort of generally the future of UX, right? For more autonomous agents that are doing things for us, and they're pushing things to us, asking us for feedback, telling us about results. Hey, you've got a meeting coming up, you should be taking a look at these things, right? As opposed to the more traditional chat environments. And what does that mean for UX? What do you think that means for MCP?
So I think for MCP and MCP servers, uh, it's actually going to 10x or even more the usage of all of the MCP servers. Because again, if you forget about the UI layer, uh, being able to chain different MCP calls is extremely useful. I've been using Cloud and Codex for the past few months intensively, and for instance, like I'm using the post-hog analytics MCP server, which is actually an app with UI, and I almost never go back to the original dashboard. So because the Posthoc MCP app can give me this like specific custom UI answers, for me it's more than enough. Like I now I don't think I will ever go back to analytics dashboard, if I can at least. For me it's a thing of the past, hopefully. Um, so and then if you want to do like uh more longer tasks and analysis, well, you can just stitch up the post-hog MCP with some other MCP and basically be able to enrich all of your data workflow. And so that's why I think MCP usage in general will only grow and grow exponentially, because autonomous agents need tools, and even they need even more tools to do smarter tasks. Now on the UI part, yeah, I kind of agree that again, having turn by turn UI UX is not as useful. And what really matters is the UI and UX that your agent presents to you at the end. And that's might be in a form of an MCP app. It might not be, and I think there's still a gap to fill on that front. Again, one of the solutions might be that the agent will build a full JavaScript website for you to present you the solution, to tell you, okay, this is the summary of the trip I'm suggesting to you. Here are the hotels that I chose with the booking.com MCP. Here are the flights that seem great that I chose on the kiwi.com MCP. Here are the activities that I got on Get Your Guide MCP, etc., etc. And so the agent itself can build this UI generatively. Or maybe there will be some other ways to compose the UI by taking parts of it from different MCP tools, but I think that's all of this is still up to to be created. Yeah.
Super cool. Thank you.
The big problem I think with this approach is that brands, B2C brands, are losing all the control, any control they had. So they can't, if the agent is building the UI, it has no interest in using the I don't know, the Nike branding colors or the Adidas branding colors. It kind of, all of this branding goes away, and that's something that brands are gonna fight against probably for a while.
I think that's really interesting. I think one of the things that, I mean, I think because the problem with particularly with brands, a lot of what you buy is that feeling and that connection with the brand. So I think the opportunity almost is to be able to work that brand into the generative AI that's coming, because I'm sure it's happening, and how you do that in a way that protects the brand, so it has the key elements, but still providing that flexibility of what's generating. And I think that's a problem that needs to be solved, because the brands want that, and yet the users want the correct UI for what they're trying to do. And I think actually you raise a really interesting point that we see, which is that all this, companies are really going to have to change to be able to handle this. The composability of MCP and the ability to bring all these different tools together opens up a whole, exponentially increases what the combinations that you can do with this. And yet, and the way I think about this is that rather than so previously people trying to build agents into their apps, you need to build your app into the agent, right? You need to barely push it into the conversation, so that you're able, and the people that do that in the most successful way are the ones that are going to win. If you make it so that the core functionality is open for everyone to be able to sort of connect in whichever way they want, I think that's what's going to win. And people who are being super protective and say, I don't want to expose this because I'll lose my data, you're going to lose, right? That's going to be, I think, the problem. And I think the faster that people are able to kind of see this and say, we need to embrace this early, they're the ones that are going to have the advantage. And the people that protect it too much, there's going to be a problem. It's going to be a super interesting time over the next year when this happens. I mean, you can already see it now. I think Ray talked a bit about, I think, tools like Excalibur, where, by taking very simple and composable things like line drawing, you can get a very complex end result very quickly, really working with the advantages of the LLM. And I think that kind of thing is particularly interesting for me. Another great example for me is Google Analytics. Most people hate Google Analytics because it's so flipping complicated, and to get the right report that takes for ages. Just connect to the MCP to it to say, look, just tell me what happened on this page yesterday. It's done. And I think that one of the things I think is a huge opportunity is taking very complex applications who have built very complex UIs and just throw it away and say, look, just connect the MCP to it and let the LLM figure it out. It's going to be much better at delivering the functionality the users need than you spending months agonizing over a UI that people hate anyway. Just get them. The people, the classic project thing is people want the hole, not the drill. No one cares about the drill. They want the hole, and they want to get it in the easiest possible way. And I think MCP and the LLM's ability to process complex functionality and to present it in a simple way and get you exactly what you want quickly is a huge unlock for a ton of complex tools out there. And I think that anyone who's got a complex UI, they should be all over MCP, because that is the huge opportunity for them to get the functionality out of their platform. The more you get into this, the more you realize the power of, you can unlock so much of all these tools by doing this. It's going to be a really interesting time. And you guys are right in the center of all of this, making it easy for people to get the MCPs going.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah.
One quick question before we go, before we finish up. I have to ask, so I don't know, JC's price list, I'm not sure I'm raising this. Alpic is famous for its uniform of 70s ski outfits and ski goggles.
Right.
Where did that come from? What was it? Because it's a great bit of branding you guys do, but where does that originate from?
Well, before MCP, we had a ski shop in the Alps, and we when we saw the AI wave, we said, okay, we need to go there. Skis are a thing of the past. No, in reality, no, we're good skiers, but we didn't have a ski shop. We just passionate about mountains. We have our 5 founders passionate about mountains. We actually did our last offsite in the Alps just a few weeks ago. And so from that came the name Alpic and all of the branding and goodies that came along. We're actually now we're working on a new summer edition for our goodies and for our ski goggles, which are going to be probably cycling or bike goggles.
Nice.
That's the next edition.
Yeah.
Super cool, man.
Great stuff. Well, I think that's everything. Nikolai, thank you very much for your time today. Great stuff. Thanks very much, guys.